she can then come to me and say, here's what Patty needs, or here's what Bill needs. Can you do this? Do you want to do this? Or not? And that can actually facilitate quality interaction, quality exchange of information, between journalists and people in the community, or the community at large, and its major concern.
I got one thing to add. At our station, we have an hour block once a week on Sunday morning from 11 to 12. We broadcast 2 community affairs programs that zero in on different communities, minority communities, African American, Hispanic, Asian American, and then we have a city view, which is anything else. And I can put you in touch with our community affairs, because they're constantly looking for new. They can devote a whole half hour to a group or an issue or whatever of their liking, or whatever's a controversy or something. And it's a kind of a variety show. Sometimes it's a hard issue, and they'll bring someone else in to discuss a festival or some kind of an anniversary or something. But we do have that vehicle, and we're constantly looking for new and fresh ideas. So if you contact me, I'll put you in touch with our community affairs director. I don't know about the other stations if they do it, but I know we have committed ourselves to that, and we do that every week.
Yes, we have a show called Beyond the Headlines, and I can put you in contact with the person that produces that show, and she tries to delve into issues that are beyond the headlines, so we can go a little bit deeper than we would be able to delve into in a normal newscast.
People are writing it down. This is good. Yes.
You mentioned about the importance of education in the media, and my question addresses the same issue. When I read the coverage about Turkey in the United States, most of the time I see that there is a lack of understanding of the culture, sometimes religion, and sometimes society. Unfortunately, there are sometimes factual errors. And the same applies to the counterpart, the Turkish reporters who are reporting from the United States. So when I read the coverage about the United States in Turkish newspapers, it's not even close to what we see in here. So my question is there a training for especially international reporters? Do you train them? Because most of the multinationals train their employees for they go out there to national mission. Because it's very important. It's more important than national news, because as people who live in the United States, we have a sense of what's really going on in here. But when you read the coverage of Turkey or any other country, you just learn about Turkey through that article. So, do you train them, or how do you educate them?
Did everyone hear the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. We don't have training sessions of that kind specifically for a country, unless something happens that would warrant us. Then we might bring in somebody or ask a reporter to specialize and interact with a college or university professor or someone that might have a big picture politically or geographically to help it understand, so that reporter knows a little more about what they're covering.
Do you want to answer?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think I couldn't agree with you more. I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be to live here and hear the daily references that just drive you mad and make it feel like there's a conspiracy. So I empathize, and I think that's exactly what you could do right here. Have a symposium, but instead of getting managers, have it for the reporters, make it free because budgets are tight, and invite them and cover the basics. Here's the difference between Islam and Muslim. Here's what you need to know. Here are the flashpoints. I think they would eat it up with a spoon, because it would be good for their careers to have a certificate from the Gulen Institute of international reporting, and understanding. Make it happen. Suggestion number 1. Suggestion number 2 is what is it that you do? What is your career?
My question?
Yes.
I'm a professor at the University of Houston downtown.
Okay. Excellent. The good thing about the internet is it allows anyone to publish. And I think if you can publish on this subject, maybe you have already, and find a good way to distribute, you could lead this seminar. And I think it would be well welcomed, and I know that our news department, I think, would be interested, especially if you could do it on a weekend, or maybe it's even a traveling summit that you come for one day and speak to all the stations. I know that we'd be glad to be the first one that you go to.
Actually, you know what would be great if you do something like that is videotape it and put it on the web so that journalists who can't attend can watch it at their leisure. So that way they have access to it all the time. That way it'll reach more people, and you're not only just educating reporters here in Houston, but you're educating people all over the world.
Actually, thank you so much. It's a great idea, and as the Gulen Institute, we would like to set up a seminar session, and we will be in touch with you.
Call me, I'll help you.
And I would suggest that maybe if it could be broadened to, Turkey is important, of course, but if it could be broadened to the wider Muslim world and maybe done in cooperation with Rice, and using some of the faculty.
Is that you volunteering, I'm hearing? You're volunteering to do the content? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's a great idea.
I'm going to make a better suggestion. If you don't mind coming by the station, I could get all the reporters to sit down and producers and listen to a presentation that you put.
That's what
Then
we're
they
saying.
could interact with you by email in the future. Because to be honest with you, half the times I don't know where my people are.
Right.
And if I say you're going to be someplace at 7 o'clock and like, well, I'm in Baytown, I'm in Sugar Land or whatever, I can't get there, then your attendance might not be what you wanted. And if we say there's something going to be at the station, we have better control over it.
I agree with Don. If you could, I know that's a lot of work for you, but if you could come to the different stations, if you would contact us, we would set up a time where we would get a good core group of the managers and the people that make the assignments and the reporters and the photographers together so that they could.
I'd just like to interject a comment here because while I appreciate what Lisa's just said, what it doesn't recognize is the pre-existing biases. So you'll agree that as journalists, you aren't actually operating from a point of objectivity. No one does.
True.
So Rick mentioned in his presentation that when you walk in the door, you leave everything behind. And I think that's very valuable as an aspirational ideal. But if journalists begin to think they're actually accomplishing it, it can be a huge problem. If you think when you walk into that newsroom, I've left my identity behind, all my unspoken assumptions and cultural predilections and perspectives, that's not the case at all. So in order to approach objectivity, everybody needs to constantly be asking the question, in what way are my own biases affecting the decisions I'm making? From the highest levels, right, of management, right down to the people who are, on the beat and doing the reporting.
I want to talk to that issue a little. I was back in Boston visiting my family for Christmas, and I was listening to an NPR story. I think it was Terry Gross's show, Fresh Air, and she does these wonderful interviews with people. And she was interviewing this gentleman who, his father was one of the architects of the religious right movement, and he had just written a book called, I forget the name of it, but basically it was about how he moved away from that religious right movement, and it was sort of like an expose on what the religious right is all about. And it was really fascinating and interesting. But then I thought to myself, I love NPR, I love public broadcasting, I'm a supporter, but I thought to myself, would they ever air a story that was about the religious right and what they were trying to accomplish, that it was anything positive? It's sort of, the audience who listens to public broadcasting tends to be more politically more center-left. And I thought to myself, you really need to be aware of your bias. And the person who was putting that story on, probably wasn't aware of it and was thinking, well, this is going to be something that's interesting to our listeners. And it made me think about the dynamic between the people who are providing the content to you and the people who are consuming the content. What sort of reaction would Terry Gross have had if she put on an interview with somebody from the religious right that was anything but critical? What do you think would happen? She would get inundated with calls from listeners, why are you putting those fearmongers on? And so I think as people, we also need to ask ourselves about our own bias and what sort of media do we take in? Are we willing to listen to those people who have different opinions from us? Because really, when you think about it, that's the only way we're going to get anywhere as a people, is when we are not just listening to people who think just like us, but when we